Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. My name is Joe Samyego, and with me we have Alex Anderson from the Gay Racing Podcast, Ben Schneider from Grid Life Encore and Last Car Down Info, and Kobe Lambeth from Grid Tonight for F1 later in the show. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, calling the show Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, the newest member. His name's in gold. To all the people out there watching, if you want to invest in the Grid Network, help us stay on the air, get to the racetrack, this is the way to do it. You'll get some Grid Network stickers mailed out to you and a thank you letter. And if you want to do a one-time investment, buy me a coffee or YouTube super chat. We catch it while we're on the air. We'll thank you on the air. $10 more will also get you the Grid Network stickers as I'm holding up. And the easiest way to support us, comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. We got a big week coming up as we're getting closer and closer to the start of the IndyCar season. Now, gentlemen, let's start off with the big race from today at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. The Pennzoil 400 presented by Jiffy Lube at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Another duel for the win at Las Vegas, just like the last time we were here during the NASCAR playoffs. And once again, Chevrolet in victory lane, still undefeated for 2024. Once again, was another Hendrick Motorsports driver, third win in a row for that team here at Las Vegas. And for Kyle Larson, he is now the third driver in the playoffs. He held off Tyler Reddick, who was looking high lane, low lane. But we saw essentially Kyle Larson put every move to prevent any clean air from hitting the front of his Toyota. Kyle Larson today, what an effort. I mean, when you look at what he did, led 181 laps, swept all the stages, big points day for him. Alex, starting with you, could this be the return of the Kyle Larson from 2021?
I 100% believe it could be. I've already picked him as my championship pick. I did that in our predictions episode a few months ago. Did it on my podcast. I think this is just a year of Kyle Larson. He is going to just be on fire all year round. He's doing the Indy 500 this year. Like, he's just doing everything you could possibly imagine, and I think it's going to translate to a bunch of success on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit. He's, like, I see no reason why he couldn't go on another tear and win 10 races again this year. It's just, he's Kyle Larson. Like, he is truly the guy, but it's also, you could also not see that from them this year because he kind of had not an off year, but not as good of a year last year. And a lot of guys are very competitive out there, and a lot of guys are going to win a lot of races this year. But I mean, I find it hard to bet against Kyle Larson ever, quite frankly.
You know, Alex, to your point, I think it says a lot about the quality of a driver that we can call a year where he won 4 races and finished second in championship points, kind of off year for him, because we know that Kyle Larson is capable of even greater than that, like winning 10 races and, of course, the championship like he did 2 years prior in 2021. And I see no reason as well why he couldn't go out and do that again this year. I had to go fact check this because I almost couldn't believe it when Mike Joy was calling him home across the line. 24 wins already. In his career. Obviously, having the 10-win season certainly helped that number quite a bit. But, no disrespect to Chip Ganassi Racing, but I think we always kind of viewed them as a championship contending IndyCar team and a race contending here or there NASCAR team, never quite able to break through to be a perennial championship contender. I mean, if can you imagine if Kyle Larson had started his career at Hendrick Motorsports just like Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson did? I don't know that he can get to 93 and 84 respectively, but I could see him by the time his career is wrapping up, in kind of the Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick range of around 60 wins. The pace that he's going, there's no reason to believe he can't hold that pace in many respects. And, today was just further proof of that. I think we could definitely be seeing flashbacks to 2021 by the end of the year.
Flashbacks to 2021 in the chat room. Adam, Kyle Larson, one word to describe today: dominant. Yeah. Behind the mic, 3 races, 3 bangers. That means 3 good races. NASCAR is getting everything right. I have to say, Kyle Larson, he does look strong. Super speedway racing is just not his thing. Bad luck, getting caught up in somebody else's mess. Atlanta, that's behind him now. He led all his teammates. William Byron, that was an odd moment. He came home 10th after it looked like a big trash bag or something got on the front of his car, literally covered more than half of the front. Had to make a green flag pit stops. Chase Elliott 12th, Alex Bowman 18th, and Bowman, he tried a little strategy to try to get some stage points in stage 2. That didn't exactly work out. Ross Chastain, the other Chevrolet driver to finish in the top 10 along with William Byron. But the surprise earlier on, I got to bring up Spire Motorsports, Corey LaJoie, Carson Hocevar up front most of the race, top 10s even. LaJoie, stage 3, he spun, blew a tire. He had to go and pit the road. That ruined his day. Hocevar still came home in 15th place, though. Yeah. Also, the progress aspire from essentially that brand new single car team, which we see come and go, to where they are now as a team.
Yeah, it's been really incredible to watch their growth over the last several years. Of course, they got that win with Justin Haley at Daytona in 2019 with a well-timed lightning strike, but it certainly was not indicative of where that car was capable of performing the first couple of years of its existence. I think, Alex, you might have even been the one that I'm talking about here. I saw somebody put a tweet out or a post on Threads or somewhere saying, like, look, if Corey LaJoie is running this well with
me.
Spire, and again, no disrespect to Corey LaJoie, but you just think about where he's been in his career, and compare that to the hype behind Zane Smith and certainly Carson Hocevar, and even seeing it now with Carson Hocevar coming home in a top 15. I mean, when those guys get a couple of years of Cup experience under their belts, we could see if they stick with Spire, those guys could be contending for race wins week in and week out. I think that team is very near getting to that point where we can consider them a team capable of doing that. So and again, Corey LaJoie is a contender for my one shining moment. Still, I know it didn't work out at the end, but I was a little bit late in turning the race on, and I texted a group chat I was in asking, how is LaJoie up in third or fourth at one point, and people were saying it was pit strategy, and I kind of expected him to fall back after that, but to his credit, he really did hang up there in the top 10 for much of a day, and felt back a little bit, and then obviously had the issue where he spun out. But this, like I said on the pre-race show, this was and will continue to be the true test of where each team is as we get into the heart of the season here. And Corey LaJoie's obviously been very strong in Atlanta since the reconfiguration. That's probably been his best track on record. But to have a run like he had today, it's pretty good. Fortunes coming Spire Motorsports way in 2024, I believe, if they can continue to keep this pace.
Man, seeing Corey LaJoie run second at a point today, that did not feel real. Like, I thought it was a joke, honestly, that we were seeing that. But in all seriousness, like I was said on Twitter, that Carson Hocevar would run up there, and if later in the season, if Spire has a speed, Carson Hocevar will be up there, and Zane Smith will be up there as well. They are both such up-and-coming talents. Everyone knows how good they are. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how they do once we get to that point. But am I surprised? I mean, yes, but also Spire has said for many, many years, like, yeah, this is our plan. We have a long-term plan of becoming successful. A lot of people kind of blew that off as like, oh, you're not actually serious, but that we're kind of starting to see that. We kind of saw glimpses of it the past couple of years as well. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what they end up doing here in the next few years. And also, by the way, they've swept the Truck Series this year so far. So, I mean, it's not just a Cup Series that they're showing improvements. It's across the board.
Yeah, I guess because Sanchez has that Rev had that alliance with Spire. So, yeah, you can say that. They've been firing all cylinders in that series as well. Joe, I think you might be muted.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm muted. So I was just saying, Chevrolet, they just about swept every race. It's just John Hunter Nemechek's win Saturday. That was don't loan non-Chevy at all this year, correct? When it comes to Daytona?
I think so, because I think Chevy put out that post that they were 6 for 6. So there you go.
Amazing stuff. JC Cars, welcome. This was a really enjoyable race, all things considered. JC, thank you so much for that comment, and we encourage everyone to be sure. One of the big things I will be checking out is when it comes to the race in action, Blaney in that Ford, he has been up there so close to the win last weekend. Overall, looking like he's going to be having a strong year. But the biggest surprise, I think, from Ford, Noah Gragson, 6th place finish. He was running in the top 10. This is the driver that a year ago, nothing was occurring with him, Legacy Motors Club. Stewart Haas Racing, nothing go on. They saw Chase Briscoe up there towards the front. Josh Berry for a while was up front too. At the end, they finished a little bit just outside the top 20, especially with Ryan Preece in 23rd. But here's the big thing I noticed. They were ahead of Front Row Motorsports. They did not show up today compared to the first two weekends. Rick Rare Racing, we know they've been working closely with RFK. Not really a factor. Austin Cindric, 29th, and Harrison Burton, 30th. Those are Penske Alliance cars. Alex, could this be a sign that Stewart Haas Racing is turning the corner and improving?
I'd say it's a bit too early to say that because, I mean, Briscoe ran up front, not up front, but like top 10 a lot of the day, and Gregson kind of showed up there at the end, which like that was very impressive, and I'm very surprised that Gregson especially was running up there. But I think it's too early. This is the first true race where we have these new Ford cars. I think the more Toyota, like Gibbs 2311, they start developing their cars and Ford learns their cars, I still think Stewart Haas is going to fall behind. I don't see it because I think once Penske and RFK, they figure out this new Ford body and everything, they're really going to figure it out. But SHR, I don't know. They just kind of seem hit or miss still. Like in practice, they all seemed pretty good, but then in the race or qualifying, they were slower. Then in the race, only the 10 and 14 kind of showed up. I don't remember seeing Ryan Preece or Josh Berry today. So I mean, SHR, I think it's way too soon. And by the way, note, Austin Cindric, I know he finished 29th, but he ran pretty good today. He had the speeding penalty, which put him back there.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate deal for Cindric because he was up there in the top 5 at least at the start of the race, and then fell back obviously with the issue. But I basically agree with Alex. I don't have too much more to add. I think it's a little bit early to say that. It is certainly a good sign, and I mentioned Corey LaJoie being a one shining moment contender. I think Gregson is certainly another. Did not expect him to be flirting with a top 5 today, but credit to him and credit to SHR. It's a step in the right direction, but it is still very early, and I think obviously Ford has a couple of heavy hitters that look very strong to start the year as well. So we'll see where they fall in that pecking order as the season goes on. But nonetheless, still a good sign today for SHR. But maybe the signs are there, but the speed could be starting to come back.
If the speed's coming back for Stewart Haas Racing, I have to ask RFK. I think today might be what we might consider disappointing. Brad Keselowski, he has a lot of success at this track. Wasn't really much of a factor towards the end. Still finished 13th place. And then Chris Buescher, hard impact early on the race. Tire issue. He was done for. He hit that wall so hard. We needed the red flag so they could put a welded plate to the safer barrier to keep the race going. Ben, does RFK seem a bit behind the ball after last year's success?
I don't want to say yes, but I mean, we are 3 races in now, and they certainly don't look like they've taken that step forward that they took last year. Again, still early in the year, still a lot of time to find that success again and rebound. But, certainly a disappointing day, for the first true test of the year, so to speak. Chris Buescher, I'm obviously thankful that that incident wasn't worse than it was. I imagine that was a very scary situation. Having the entire wheel come off, and again, Joe, like you mentioned, the impact's so hard, but they had to red flag it to repair the safer barrier. So that's certainly not going to boost morale over at RFK. And then your co-owner, Brad Keselowski as well. 13th, not terrible, but certainly not where you want to be if you want to be considered a top contending team for a championship this year. And Keselowski, of course, is on that winless streak that continues to get longer and longer every weekend here. I know he's desperate to put that to an end. So it does still seem like there is some work to do. As much of a step forward as last year was, it hasn't been the greatest of starts to the year for RFK for sure.
Just like with SHR possibly coming back up, I'm not too sure if I can positively say that RFK is going down. I think it's just too soon. And because one, we didn't really get to see much of Buescher today because of that incident he had. But I mean, Keselowski was very, very poor today, and he started getting better as the race went on. But it's just like, that's not the way the RFK cars ran last year. So it is odd, but again, Ford has a brand new car. I think RFK, they're going to work on figuring it out. It might take a little bit of time. Maybe in the summer months, we'll start seeing them back to how they were last year. I just think it's too early. This was the first like true regular bulk of the season kind of race. So I don't think we'll really know an answer for another like month or so if who's going up and who's going down.
It is going to be interesting to see what happens in this next month as we get more of the season completed. I know in the past RFK, they've had success at Daytona, but just because you left without success at Daytona doesn't mean you had a bad race. You probably got caught up in a crash. Brad Keselowski, that's what happened to him. Atlanta, that's just something else now. It's almost a mini super speedway. So overall, I don't think RFK's worried or concerned yet, but this month might be really telling to see where they stack up with the new Fords and the new Toyotas. For Tyler Reddick, he brought that new Toyota up towards the front. He essentially led all the Toyota finishers. And one of the big things I got to say, it was really interesting seeing him and Bubba Wallace sort of working together when Bubba was so many laps down. What is it with Bubba Wallace and the pit crew? The tire would not come off. A 3-tire stop. And I was on the call with Ultimate Sports Radio, and there was like, did I hear that right? A 3-tire pit stop? And then we find out it's just the bad luck continues. That left front wheel, that ruined his race. He was fast, though. He pushed Tyler Reddick to gain small amounts of time on Kyle Larson during the race. Looked like towards the end they were going to try that, but the timing just did not work. I don't know if that was the intention or not. But what was your thoughts on that kind of teamwork, Alex, where we saw Wallace helping Tyler Reddick when he was multiple laps down, stuck in 36th position?
And yeah, I want to mention too that Tyler Reddick was also very frustrated with his pit crew in a post-race interview he did. He was saying like it's the same stuff as last year, and it's just continuing on. So Reddick, there's a lot of frustration over 2311, rightfully so, with Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. But the teamwork they had, they took a bad situation and tried to turn it into a good one. I thought it was interesting. It's not against the rules. I don't have a problem with it. I'm sure some people out there don't like it because it's kind of like team orders, but it's fine. Like, Bubba's out there just getting laps. He can be out there to help his teammate. And Bubba got out of the way when Larson and Reddick were coming up, battling for the win at the end. So I think it's perfectly fine. And in a way, it reminded me, I forget what year it was, when Kurt Busch won at, I think it was Atlanta before 21. The repave. And it was with, I think Chastain was in the 42. Chastain was getting lapped and like held up someone to help Kurt Busch out. It reminded me of that. And, you know, like it's perfectly fine. Like if your teammate needs some help, you can help him out if you're struggling. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super enthusiastic about team orders, but, you know, giving somebody a little bit of a bump down the straightaways, I think that, you know, it's very hard to kind of police that and enforce that. You know, I think it's one of those, I don't know if you call it necessary evils, but, you know, unless it gets to the point where, you know, you go full Ferrari Austria 2002 and you switch them on the line with Schumacher and Barrichello, like as long as you're not doing something that blatant, you know, I think there's really no good way to enforce or police it either. You know, we can like it, we can not like it, but, you know, I think certain things have to be within, you know, a decision that's made that's best for the team. And, you know, even if, you know, Bubba Wallace had been a little bit more aggressive, you know, trying to stay on the, well, I guess not on the lead lap because he was multiple laps down, but avoid going another lap down and holding Larson up to help Tyler Reddick. That was a Atlanta 21 situation, like you were mentioning, Alex. I wouldn't have had a problem too much with him doing that. Now, of course, he elected to go down the gentleman driver route instead and get out of the way. And then maybe he would have tried to do the same thing and push Reddick past Larson there, but I think Reddick just had too much pace there at the end. But you know, I didn't love it necessarily, but I think that, you know, at the same time, if we start trying to talk about ways to try to police that or enforce that, you know, I tend to think that generally speaking, less is more when it comes to, you know, how many rules we try to police and institute here. And, you know, the yellow line rule is a perfect example of that. Obviously, I haven't been a huge fan of that in recent years. So I didn't have too much of a problem with it. I can't really say that.
Now, you may have noticed Cup's tech is complete, so the official results are updated. Something interesting I noticed taking a look at the standings, and that is the number of Toyotas we have there, we have 3 out of 4 Joe Gibb Racing Toyotas. We know Christopher Bell had some weird luck early on in the race, flat tire that put him behind. He came back, got stage points. And then he went for a spin, exiting turn 2. That essentially ruined his day. But look at Legacy Motor Club. Eric Jones, John Hunter Nemechek, +5, +2 above the cut line. They're in the top 16. And of course, you have both 2311 Toyotas. Bubba Wallace fell a lot of spots after today's rough race, but Todd Reddick gained a lot of spots. Been surprised by Legacy making it up there quietly. We haven't talked much about them.
Yeah, well, first of all, Jimmy Johnson, 37. Get your act together. What's going on there? No, in all seriousness, of course, we know he's part-time. But Legacy's, I think off to a very solid start to the year. Sometimes, as strong as we think the Toyota partnership would be for them in the long run, maybe having more manufacturer support than they had from Chevrolet and, with the support not being diluted with so many teams, obviously Toyota has fewer cars in the field. We're expecting this to be a step up for Legacy in the long term, but there's always some, kinks to be ironed out whenever you start a new partnership. And sometimes it takes a little bit to get up to speed and for your team to get used to the new engines, the new cars and everything. 15th and 16th might not look super impressive on paper, but I think given where Legacy was last year, with this whole goal of, we want to go from a C team to a B team to an A team, they were certainly not an A team last year. I don't know that they're an A team yet this year, but they certainly are trending towards that direction more so than they were towards the end of last year. So, it's nice to see both Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek, currently within the playoff field here. Of course, we know we're going to have more than 3 winners by the time comes time for those. But, it's been a very solid start to the year, I think, for them. And, for Toyota as a whole, to have 7 of your 8 full-time entries in the top 16 and in that playoff grid as we speak, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised or anything. I think it's, again, too early, like I said with the other questions like this. But Legacy, this is something to be proud of, I think. It is early, but hey, they're not way back in the 20s or 30s. They're up in the teens, and they're in good position for points, which is more than likely. They're going to probably have to point their way in. It's unlikely they'll get a win unless they get a win at Super Speedways or Eric Jones wins at Darlington, because that's not in the playoffs this year. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's really interesting because Eric Jones, I think, is super, super underrated, and he's a championship caliber driver. If he would have got more time with Gibbs, I think he'd be very, very strong still today. So I think it's going to be very interesting seeing if he and John Hunter Nemechek can kind of stay in the top 20 in points. I definitely think Eric Jones can. I think John Hunter Nemechek's going to be very interesting to follow, especially with how the 42 car ran last year with Noah Gragson. It was just kind of a disaster. So, I mean, yeah, huge change after last season for sure.
I know in the prediction show for NASCAR, I said I think John Hunter Nemechek was going to have a pretty good season, potentially surprise everyone with a win. I'm seeing him up there, very quiet. That's pretty impressive overall. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Legacy Motor Club. Of course, that was the first 1.5 mile oval that doesn't have super speedway characteristic this weekend. Las Vegas, though, is also in the playoffs. It's the first race in the round of 8. So the winner here is going to punch their ticket to the championship 4. We had 6 cautions today, 24 lead changes among 15 drivers. But Kyle Larson, as we mentioned, he led the most laps. And very similar to the fall race in 2023 that Kyle Larson won, where he won by leading 133 laps. In the spring race, Kyle Larson finished second to William Byron, his teammate. So they got the sweep there. Ben, I got to ask you, after today, which teams could likely return to Las Vegas with a better shot at winning against Hendrick?
Oh, against Hendrick? I was going to say Hendrick. I mean, you've got the last 3 races won by that team. I don't know. I mean, it's been a running theme on this show. We talk about 2311 and their pit crew screwing things up, and Tyler Reddick still finished second today. Bubba Wallace has shown speed here in the past. I hate to bring up October 2022, but he was running up front before that incident happened. And again, let's not go there right now because we don't need to bring that back up too much. But maybe that talking about Toyota and how strong they started the year, if they can continue to hold this pace and come back here in the fall, maybe that could be a contending team that you could see, especially Reddick, with how good he is running that high line, trying to get that run on Kyle Larson. And only when he got to him and tried to shift his line a little bit did he fall back again, and that kind of sealed the deal for Kyle Larson today. I think Tyler Reddick could probably be one of the names to look out for when we come back here in the fall for a non-Hendrick entry, if you will, looking to spoil their party.
I think it's going to be another Hendrick car when they come back here in the fall. However, if 2311, if they can figure out how to do a pit stop, like, they're going to be set, because they are getting really, really good on the mile and a half. Look at Texas. Bubba Wallace almost won there last year. Kansas, I mean, besides Denny Hamlin's win there last year, 2311's won pretty much the last 3 of the last 4, I believe, at Kansas. They are getting really caught up on the mile and a half compared to the other teams. Other than 2311, I would look at Penske, just because Joey Logano has won there recently in 2022. But other than that, it's Hendrick. I don't know how you can bet against him, whether it's William Byron, whether it's Kyle Larson. Alex Bowman's even won there. Chase Elliott might start having a bit of a comeback. Who knows? But it's hard to bet against Hendrick right now at Vegas.
Hard to bet against Hendrick right now. I'm sort of surprised. I don't know if it seems to be just me. Does it appear like Chase Elliott not a whole lot of a factor at Vegas? And could this be a little bit of he missed the race last year where he didn't get the track time, and this is his, well, he did the fall race, but yeah, it just seems like he was not full speed today, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head where he finished. I see he's 8th in the standings right now. So I mean, I guess it's been a quiet 8th. We haven't talked too much about him this year, but it's not like he's in a bad position. Okay, 12th. Again, so kind of like Keselowski, like we were talking about earlier on the show. Hardly a terrible day by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just trying to. Obviously Larson won the race. Byron was up there. I don't know where Bowman finished, but certainly at the very least the second to last Hendrick car in the running order. So I mean, obviously he went from not running this race at all last year, like you mentioned, Joe, to just being in the race. Of course, that's an improvement by default year to year. But I mean, Hendrick obviously have a lot of speed right now, and I would never count Chase Elliott out entirely, but I still think he has a lot of proof coming off of the season that he had last year.
Hendrick Motorsports has always kind of had a thing where 2 cars are really good and 2 cars are just kind of not as good. And that seems to be the case again. And I remember during the broadcast today, Kevin Harvick was saying that Hendrick really needs to figure out the 9 and the 48, why they don't have the same speed as Byron and Larson. It is kind of bizarre, but that's just kind of a Hendrick Motorsports thing, going way back to the 2000s.
Does seem like just something with Hendrick. You're gonna have 2 cars are just super competitive. For Chase Elliott, I just feel like we saw Alex Bowman up there. Granted, that was strategy, running well, just very quiet. But Chase Elliott, at least he's been consistent to be in a good spot in the standings. Try to position himself well. Overall, a top finish for Chase Elliott. With that said, we're gonna switch over to Formula One, where we got a little bit of drama to report on from yesterday's race.
Yeah, Joe, yesterday we recapped the Bahrain Grand Prix right here on Grid Network, the opening round of the 2024 Formula One season. We encourage you all to go check out the recap after we go off the air here. The link is in the video description below. Since we were on the air yesterday, more came out about drama between the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, VCARB, if you want to be fancy. Yesterday, with about 3 laps to go, VCARB ordered Yuki Tsunoda to let Daniel Ricciardo by. Tsunoda was annoyed and allowed Ricciardo by. Ricciardo was on soft tires but needed to catch up to Kevin Magnussen, losing more ground than Tsunoda. In the end, no points were on the line between the two, but Ricciardo did finish ahead of his teammate. And during the cool-down lap, Ricciardo crossed the checkered flag and Tsunoda locked up his wheels and nearly took out Ricciardo. Ricciardo yelled on the radio asking what was happening, and said some words that we cannot say on air here. On the post-race show, they called it an immaturity moment. Was this a bad call by VCARB, and does this set up a fierce rivalry between teammates? If so, does it add tension between them if the two are in position for one of them to get points? Kobe, what do you think?
Hey, Alex, and let me start off by saying that Visa Cash App RB is one of the most strangest names I've ever seen from a Formula One team. I still can't believe that VCARB is actually a thing, and I didn't really understand this call that this team made, especially when there are no points in the line. So like if you're gonna swap position like this and there's like no points, like what are you doing? Yeah, and we don't need to go into all this team order stuff, because I think all of our viewers know how we feel about team orders in motorsports. I'm sure everybody else, or most of everybody, probably feel the exact same way. But everyone who knows Yuki Tsunoda knows that this is the type of reaction you get from Yuki, because he's very tense, and when things go wrong, Yuki he can explode and get very, very angry. And I'm sure Visa Cash App RB is probably going to sit down the two drivers, Ricciardo and Tsunoda, to talk about this incident and make sure that they're going to be racing each other with respect and doing whatever is best for the team, because you don't want to be one race in and already have tensions rising between the two drivers. Yeah, so for the sake of this team and this pairing working, this certainly has to be a bump in the road, and I'm sure that the team leaders at this organization are going to have a sit down with them and make sure that nothing more will come of this.
The only thing I can think of is somebody of the team must have thought that Ricciardo had enough pace to somehow get if not in the points, finish 11th or gain them a couple of spots at least. Obviously, that's the only reason that teams would make this switch in the first place. But like Kobe mentioned, there's no points on the line once you get past 10th, and when you're a midfield team like we expect Visa Cash App RB to be this year, what are the chances that your final placement in the standings after 24 races, the longest calendar we've ever seen, is going to come down to a tie on points, and you're going to go on countback all the way to who has a 13th place or 14th place finish over one another? It's not like these guys are going to score 0 points all year, we don't think, at least. And then it becomes a situation where it's just a formality or technicality when it comes to who finishes 18th or 19th in points. We expect them to be a team that can score points here or there at the very least. So I don't see how letting a driver take a 13th place finish and have that in his countback bank, so to speak, is going to affect anything. So I really don't understand why the move was made in the first place. This is the team orders that we're talking about that we don't like, obviously. When it's somebody that's multiple laps down, trying to give a push to a teammate in a NASCAR race, I think that doesn't come anywhere close to actually swapping positions and crossing the line without giving the position back. We had that controversy with Max Verstappen at Brazil a couple of years ago, well after he'd already clinched the championship. So I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this, and I think it like we mentioned, it didn't really have much of a chance at yielding anything beneficial for the team, and at worst, it resulted in conflicts between their two drivers at the first race of the year ahead of the longest calendar we've ever seen. So I think it would be very wise for the team to sit down this week and go over the incident and make sure all the tension is cleared, or much of the tension is cleared at the very least. I don't know if it's going to be possible with how fierce those things got at the end of the race this weekend, but certainly not a great start to the year for this new VCARB outfit here.
Now, how massive would this situation have become if the two had crashed after the race there when Yuki locked up his tires? What do you guys think about that scenario?
Well, given that it's part of the Red Bull family, I think Liam Lawson might have been getting a phone call. And I say that only half joking when I say that, because this team is absolutely this Red Bull family, if you will. Obviously, it's not the Red Bull senior team, but this whole program is known for being super ruthless with their drivers and not giving them another chance here. And this is a very serious matter. If they had taken each other out or damaged their cars, and you think of how many millions of dollars they could have caused in a repair bill for the team and the short turnaround to Saudi Arabia this week, yeah, that would not have been very good. So thankfully, it didn't come to that, but with how upset Yuki Tsunoda was, he better be thankful that he didn't end up running into Daniel Ricciardo. I'm sure that was not his intention, but a lot of times when you're driving these cars, you can do something that isn't super intentional, but it can have very bad consequences. So thankfully that didn't happen, but it certainly had the possibility to end up leading in a situation like that. And again, that just further highlights why I think it's necessary for them to sit down as a team this weekend and clear the air.
Yeah, and I think Yuki Tsunoda is also on a much shorter leash than Daniel Ricciardo is right now. Given everything I already mentioned about how dealing with his temper and his attitude. I was actually just reading an article earlier in the week about Yuki Tsunoda's hot temper on the radio and his demeanor, and how Red Bull would be a little hesitant, to try to move him further along because of that, and especially with the team dynamic. So I think that it was a great thing for him, that this did not end in a crash and ban. I totally get what you're saying about joking, that if this would have happened, that would have been calling Liam Lawson to come in, because we know Red Bull is really ruthless. And as we saw last year, they didn't let Nick de Vries compete in his home Grand Prix, for crying out loud. And they couldn't even just they couldn't even let him just have that one race, instead of being like, we're gonna let you run your home Grand Prix and give you a send off. They couldn't even
after
do that.
Daniel Ricciardo got hurt. They still didn't let him come back to run his home race. I mean, yeah. And then Albon, got promoted, to the senior team, and Verstappen did after Kvyat had a rough couple of races. I mean, given Red Bull's history, you could not put it past them to say, we're going to make a midseason change here. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I was half joking when I said that, because it is only the first race, but I think to your point, Kobe, Ricciardo's obviously a veteran. He's coming back to a racing family that he's been a part of for a long time and had a lot of success with. I think he's got a much longer leash of patience, so to speak, than Yuki Tsunoda, who's been with the team for a few years now, and to be quite frank, maybe hasn't taken the step forward in his performance that a team would have liked over the course of 3 seasons here. So it certainly, let's be thankful the situation wasn't worse than it ended up being, but it's not a great start to the year.
For sure. And we also know about the growing tension at Red Bull's main team with Christian Horner. Yesterday, Jos Verstappen told the Daily Mail that there is tension here while he remains in position. The team is in danger of being torn apart. It can't go on the way it is. It will explode. He is playing the victim when he is causing problems. Talking about Christian Horner from Jos Verstappen there. We are putting together a story for this for Grid tonight, which will be on Wednesday, where we'll go more into this ongoing situation. And now, Ben, I'll toss it over to you for our one shining moment.
Thank you, Alex. Let's move towards a more positive note here and highlight some things from the weekend that stood out most to us. So, Alex, I'll hand it right back to you for the start here. What was your one shining moment from this weekend in Bahrain and in Las Vegas?
Now, I might be stealing one that you mentioned earlier, but I think I got to give it to Spire because, like I said, they are 3 for 3 in trucks, and they had an impressive showing in the Cup race today. I think they're going to be doing great things if they can keep it up. I mean, I know I kept saying it's too early in the season to be making predictions about the rest of the teams, but Spire have never really run like this on a non-super speedway before. So that's going to be something to watch. They're my shining moment for sure. For the rest of this week, though, my shining moment is IndyCar is back. Watch IndyCar this weekend.
Yeah, really looking forward to watching the IndyCar season kick off to see who's going to win the season opening Firestone Grand Prix on the streets of St. Pete. And my one shining moment for this race weekend, I got to give it to one of Stewart-Haas Racing's newest drivers, Noah Gragson. An impressive top 10 finish at his home track, and considering where he was last year when he was at Legacy Motor Club, his rookie season, was very, very tough, involved in multiple incidents, off the pace, multiple weekends, and then got released from the team, just past halfway through the season, and now to come over to Stewart-Haas Racing and to have a run like this on a Cup race, I think Noah Gragson has proved to a lot of people that he's capable of being a Cup Series driver, and this could be, just one race, and of all the things to come in this 2024 season, because after his dismal rookie season, Gragson certainly has a lot to prove, and I really think, today is the beginning of that.
My shining moment? Well, the big one, I would say I'll save that for Encore, because I think it's from the Truck Series, and I think you all know where I'm going with that. But another shining moment for me has to go out to Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz, what a drive, what an effort. Considering he knows the news, he's gonna be out of that Ferrari seat. Lots up on the air for his future. A lot of drivers in F1 without a contract for next year. He needs to go out there and perform, and he did that, bringing the fight to his teammate, to George Russell. Try to do something, and he looks so confident saying that we might have something for the Red Bulls at the end of the season. That is just an impressive effort by Carlos Sainz. It'll be really interesting if he continued that. But I gotta say, considering everyone anticipated his teammate to finish ahead of him, even maybe get a surprise win, he just went out there, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see what he does this year. Carlos Sainz, my shining moment from F1.
Yeah, well, thank you, Joe. Certainly a lot to discuss in the Encore show tomorrow, and I think most people probably know where you're going with that as well. I'm going to steal Kobe's here and also give it to Noah Gragson. Obviously, like I mentioned during the main segment here, I think he deserves a shining moment based on where we have expected Stewart-Haas to be based on their struggles last year, and certainly based on Gregson's struggles last year. I mean, you want to talk about a dismal season and the wheels completely coming off with what led to his suspension. It's been a long road back for him, but this is certainly the shot in the arm that he needs to get back on the right track here. And we've seen it in Xfinity. We know that the talent is there. It's just a matter of translating that over to the Cup Series. And another shining moment I want to shout out is Derek Kraus. I think he ended up 28th today in the results sheet, which is not too impressive on paper, but you got to remember it is his Cup debut for a team that is still fairly new to this series with Colleagues Cup program. And he was off sequence today. He got up there and led a couple laps and got his moment in the spotlight and got the broadcast to shout him out. And he even got Kevin Harvick and Clint Boyer talking about, when was the first race that we led. Obviously, Kevin Harvick led in his third race, which is the race he won at Atlanta. But, it was a cool moment to see. And certainly people that have followed the ARCA Menard Series West, formerly the K&N Pro Series West for many, many years, will recognize the name Derek Kraus and the incredible run of success he had there with Bill McAnally's team. So great to see him get this opportunity with colleague in a couple of starts in the Cup Series this year and made his name known today. That's another one shining moment on my end.
A lot of shining moments. Encourage everyone to comment with your shining moments and thoughts, questions, opinions. We'll definitely get back to you. And of course, a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, for investing in the Grid Network. You too can invest. Link in the video description, plus a link to our Buy Me a Coffee. And if you're not watching us live, you'll see that little thanks button underneath the YouTube video. You can hit that. Invest in the Grid Network, $10 or more, or join our Patreon. You'll get some Grid Network stickers. And of course, easiest way to support us, subscribe to us, hit the bell icon. Also, don't forget to visit gridranking.com. Matthew will be working on his article recapping the Las Vegas race. And we're less than a month away from the 8th annual Grid Ranking. The first Sunday of April, we're counted up to that. And we're going to be getting all the grid ratings for all the series up shortly as well. So be sure to follow us across social media. And of course, click on the link to everyone's channel that's right here on the Grid Network. For Alex, Ben, and Kobe, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.